It's been a really difficult 24 hours, I've been starting fights off of everybody on Twitter, Facebook, Snap, TikTok, at the altar, of course, of Sir Lewis Hamilton criticism. So I think now more than ever, it's important I just take this time out to say, from the bottom of my heart, I want to apologise to absolutely no one. What we will not do on this channel is sacrifice truth value nor objectivity at the altar of any cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. We shoot straight on here, have always, will always. GTFO, what are we doing? Let's talk about some F1 news. Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, F1 stuff about which we need to talk, threads that we need to pull at. Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will be techier than techie things. Super high downforce or low downforce, even aero efficiency will be king per Formula data analysis on Twitter. Drag must be low, full throttle settings. It speaks to Red Bull and it speaks to McLaren, therefore, which will be interesting. Oscar Piastri, you'll recall, Zach Brown has said, of the two papaya-coloured drivers, is the one that's braver on the throttle, braver through the high-speed stuff. So potentially, Oscar Piastri will fulfil on his now favourite status for the Drivers' Championship in 2025. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on the rumours that Saudi are about to buy an F1 team, an Aramco titled F1 team. So too, we'll talk about Frederick Vasseur. He's chimed in on the Ferrari aspect and circumstance. So too about Lewis Hamilton. I'm not going to talk about Lewis Hamilton again because people can't say anything critical or constructive about that fella, because the zeitgeist, the extremists lose their mind. I will tell you what Frederick Vasseur has says, friend of Sir Lewis Hamilton, boss of Sir Lewis Hamilton, long-time colleague of Sir Lewis Hamilton. And we'll hear what he has to say. We'll hear what they're saying in Ferrari, in Italy, autoracer.it, about the difference between Charles and Lewis as at the 17th of the 4th, 2025. So too, in closing, we'll talk about Brundle on George. We'll talk about Brundle on Max Verstappen and what the contract extension rumoured. King George of King's Lynn, Norfolk, $30 million US, potentially a year extension. What that means for Max Emilian Verstappen. Oh, the humanity. What's going on, Daniel? Jay, Max, we're going long today. We'll go 30 minutes because there's stuff about which we need to talk. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia first. It's going to be difficult for Max Verstappen. Now, as difficult as was the previous Grand Prix, probably not. It speaks more to the handling dynamics of Red Bull. Quick turns, as near as makes no difference. The entirety of the lap is full throttle. Is it not? Aerodynamic efficiency, etc. But that RB21 is still not without multitudinous travails of the aerodynamic and mechanical variety. We know understeer is not it's not brilliant as far as mitigating for understeer, and also in the ground effect era, understeer is the dragon for which these cars need to slay at the altar of lower lap time. So how will they do it? It's going to get techie. I would argue that Oscar Piastri is still the favourite per the odds makers, and so too Lando Norris. And I'm not just talking about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, obviously. I'm talking about the Drivers' Championship. There is a groundswell surrounding the Australian now, as if he is the champion elect. As if he is the one now, not just because of his temperament and cool, calm demeanour. The fact that James Allen says that he's cut from the same cloth as Michael Schumacher, Red Baron, settings. But now this is a problem for Lando and the rest as far as Oscar Piastri's pace in absolute terms. Check out the individual sectors. Over the past two Grand Prix, if he doesn't make a mistake, he drops it on pole. It's that simple. Normalise for anomalies. Sector 1, as at the previous penultimate Grand Prix in Suzuka. But for that, he drops it on pole. That's who you're dealing with. As versus Lando, for me, it's always been a bit techie. I thought Lando Norris had the speed over his teammate Oscar Piastri. Indeed, he did in 2024. 20-3 is what he beat Oscar Piastri in qualifying, including the sprint. So coming into 2025, I'm going to hold myself to account. I thought Lando Norris had the whip hand in terms of pace, but OJ Piastri's done something incredible in the off-season. Everything that we expected from Lando that he hasn't done. He's gone away and practiced, learned. He's fixed for the tyre management that was a weakness last year. And so too, he's fixed for his pace in absolute terms in quali. Oh, the humanity is going to get, I'm telling you, Oscar Piastri, chat, is an absolute problem for everybody on the grid, especially when you consider this is only his 3rd season. Lando is in his 7th. Ergo, we are not doing an apples to apples comparison. Let me tell you about this Saudi Arabian team. And it's been rumoured for a while that the Saudis were sniffing around 2 things: an entry into F1, and so too F1 as a sporting endeavour, a franchise. We know that because Mohammed bin Salman many cycles ago was saying, you know what, the asset value that's being rumoured, far too high. What? You have nothing to do with the commercial arm, the commercial rights holder, Mohammed bin Salman. So therefore, take 2 seats, sir. He was given a cease and desist even by the commercial rights holder then, the Menikali et al., and quite rightfully so. But why was he so keen to pull down the asset value of a commercial partner in F1? The bods who pay you circa 60 to 70 million at the time of writing per year for your services. Well, of course, it's because his mates, the sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East, those were the bods who were sniffing around a potential takeover of Liberty Media owned F1. We've talked about the potential ramifications as far as what's going on at Liberty. Greg Maffei said once upon a time, very famously in an interview, that they couldn't sell with the structure of Liberty Media as it is. Now, as at the 17th of the 4th, 2025, they have restructured. They've gotten rid of, unwinded all of their child member institutions. Long gone is Live Nation and Ticketmaster. Now the sole entity underneath Liberty Media as a child member is F1. Riddle me this, chat. Surely that insinuates. I understand that correlation doesn't imply causation. But Greg Maffei was the one who told you that if ever they were to sell, that they'd have to restructure. That restructure has happened. And so there is no impediments between now and a potential sale by Liberty Media of F1. Oh, by the way, Saudi Arabian Team 2, Aramco F1. I don't know how I feel about this. Listen, more the merrier. They've got the current agreement, Concord agreement, as it stands, indicates that you can have another 2 additional teams. Cadillac have taken up one of those spaces. There is one more. Bring in a high-tech, therefore. Well, you know that there's something going on in the background as far as high-tech arbitration settings. FIA said the reason why high-tech can't come in to F1, you over there, us over here, is financial resources. We know that there was a payout, a settlement, because high-tech said, what do you want about financial resources? That's nonsense. That's going on. Second phase of, well, how about a Lucky Sons, therefore? How about a Saudi Arabian team, therefore? I think F1 would be better with additional teams. That's my personal opinion. But Saudi, I have, listen, prosecution rests, no further questions. Go on then, let's talk about Frederick Vasseur. Jay, Peter, you seem to be... Outlaw, you need to update me, mate. Are you saying that Max Verstappen is leaving? That is Chaos Turtle saying that Arabs are taking over. Techie drop kicks off. Go on then, let's talk about it. Frederick Vasseur has spoken about Sir Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. There's a brilliant article on autoracer.it that insinuates that Charles Leclerc is making the difference as far as that SF25. For it is difficult to drive, unstable at the rear. And again, if you're talking the multitudinous travails, aerodynamic and mechanical, this is what Lewis experienced and did not like last year, much to his surprise, therefore, when he puts on the red overalls, yellow badge, black prancing horse atop, he's greeted with the same travails multitudinous of the aerodynamic and mechanical variety, instability at the rear, snap oversteer, understeer in the low minimum speeds. That's the hand in dynamic, no, the aspect of this SF25 car. Lewis has spoken to it, his words, not mine, that he's struggling with it, struggling not verbatim, but that he's wrestling with it and trying to adapt his driving style, that everything's different, he says, even around the power unit and the engine braking. Sir Lewis talking now, not me. The Italians have written an article saying that Charles Leclerc was brilliant last Grand Prix, that he was making a difference, that circa the difference, the delta between Lewis and Charles last race was anywhere between 2 and 3 tenths. Their words, not mine. I'm not chiming in on this Lewis Hamilton thing anymore. Frederick Vasseur and the Italians would give you the details. They'll do the deep dive and they'll give you the upshots. But for the safety car and another couple different circumstances, Charles Leclerc would have been down the road. He is managing that car. My concern as a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan, despite what the haters say, is that Charles Leclerc is now becoming himself, his final form. No longer are the mistakes plighting him. No longer are his race weekends each and every single time punctuated by errors of the unforced variety. I would hope if I had a time machine and this were Back to the Future, I would catapult Lewis back to 2022 and put him in the red car with them their yellow badges and black prancing horse atop then, because Charles Leclerc was vulnerable. Now, however, he's maturing, and that makes it techier than techie things. The Tifosi will be looking at that driver pairing, understanding now, as auto racer R. Alessandro, the what's his name, writes this article. In there, he says Charles Leclerc is weaponizing the weaknesses of that car. He's doing like Max Verstappen does and allowing the rear to balance around him. He's weaponizing the rear instability to the end of lower lap time. That's Charles Leclerc's genius, and by extension, on the flip side of that performance, they'll be looking at Sir Lewis Hamilton. Forget what I think, because I have an anti-Lewis bias. Here's what Frederick Vasseur says. He says, you won't replace 12 years of collaboration in 2 weeks or 2 races. Ergo, this is still an acclimatization phase for Sir Lewis. That means, quote, for sure we need to improve as a team, but I think this is true for everybody. Not just the engineers, not the pit crew, but the drivers too. Plural settings. He continues, in the paddock, we have that DNA for our sport. It is to try and do a better job. And I think it's good to have Lewis with this mindset to say, okay, I have to also improve and adapt myself to the car. Now, to Lewis Hamilton's credit, that's exactly what he said post-race, last race, right? That I'm still wrestling with this new circumstance. Don't expect me to hit the ground running so quickly. The payback period will be longer than 3 races. It's a brand new circumstance, brand new steering wheel that he's adapted, by the way. Engine braking, he says that he's never ever done that before. He said the brake discs are completely different. Brembo's, he was dealing with CS or CI previously at Mercedes. So of course we need to give Sir Lewis Hamilton grace, but I submit this to you just so that you're aware of the groundswell and momentum that the Italians are doing what Italians do sometimes, knowing all the while that Scuderia Ferrari is their team, about which they are passionate, for which they will kill. The Ferrari boss continued, quote, we will work on the car to adapt the car to Lewis, but he also has to make a step. And I think between us, this is done in a positive way and a very constructive one. He continues, I quote, I appreciated the direction of Lewis on Saturday last Grand Prix weekend, and I did my best to push him a little bit, and on Sunday he was on very good shape. Full stop. New paragraph. We will see. The F1 world and community watches and waits to see how this Ferrari news story develops. But one thing's for sure, Scuderia Ferrari will always Scuderia Ferrari. Rob Smedley's told you as much. If you are winning races and therefore silverware, you'll never need to buy a drink nor a meal in Milan, Rome, Italy more broadly. You'll be worshipped, adorned as patron saints. You've seen the memes and merchandise. If you lose though, driving that there red car with that yellow badge and that black prancing horse atop Italy's team, they will spit at you in the street. I don't want to portend anything. Those are Rob Smedley's words, not mine. Oh, and by the way, Let's go. Let's go on all this George Russell stuff, because the rumour's been arrived for, I want to say, near enough 7 days now, that George is on the brink of signing himself an extension to his contract. Why does this matter? Well, because it's instrumental in determining where Max Verstappen is going to end up. You know that George, being a young, hungry lion, should have got a contract extension ages ago. Why would they run down his contract if indeed it wasn't Toto's plan nor intention to drop kick in the chest one George Russell at the altar of getting Max Verstappen in? We know that Toto rused the fact that he made the mistake, missed out on Max Verstappen, the next generational driver, all the way back in 2015, 2016. There was no room at the Mercedes, boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth in then. It was Lewis, it was Nico Rosberg. Max Verstappen was a young pup, 17 years old. You could never inject him into that team, even if you had the opportunity. Well, how about now? Forward forecast the results of Max Verstappen, and he is the next one after Lewis as far as his not insubstantial ability behind the wheel of an F1 car. God tier settings each and every single time. Ergo, Toto, the boy who cried wolf, at the altar of results and shareholder value, more pertinently, will be ruining the fact that he didn't sign Max Verstappen then. It would have been cheaper. Sack off Nico Rosberg, who was going to retire anyway once he won his first World Championship, and only in 2016. Toto will regret that and will be looking to amend for that in real time. But George, Toto said, is the next one. He's the next leader of the team, pioneering leadership settings, cool, calm head. The team love him. I love him. We love him. You love him. That's who they think George Russell is. And to be fair to George, he's been brilliant erstwhile season to date. Missed the consistency settings. I saw a stat, if I recall correctly, of the last 12 races, 11 of them, George has finished within the top 5. That's God tier. Particularly last season in a Mercedes that was still temperamental, mercurial, unstable at the rear, snap oversteer and understeer were its lot. Now, however, George is stepping up, but some are arguing, aka Martin Brundle, that it might just be too late. We know that Max Verstappen has told us a couple of things if he's going to see out his contract to 2028 as follows. He will need a semblance of harmony, the key people at the team to stay, and a car capable of winning races and therefore championships. Gonzo, Gonzo, Gonzo on all 3 counts. Where are those things? Wheatley gone, Newey gone, Marshall gone, Fallows gone. The personnel are no longer there. Semblance of harmony. Are you having a giraffe? Christian Horner came out of the press conference last race weekend and trying to diminish the problems and multitudinous travails of the team and the car. All the while, the legend of motorsport.com, that is Ronald Vording, is saying, listen, that car is P7. Don't diminish this by saying that Max is only 7 or 8 points adrift of Lando Norris in the championship. That the problems for Red Bull as far as their car, the correlation in the wind tunnel versus reality, the disconnect between theory and practice are extensive now, of consequence proper. So Christian Horner shouldn't be coming out to the press and media and being so disingenuous. The problems are of consequence and multitudinous. And how do you fix them, therefore? When you put the microphone in front of Max Verstappen's face and ask him that, he says, I'm aware of the urgency of the problem, how we need to solve for it, but I don't know if they are. Christian Horner corroborates that story in minimising, saying, well, Max is only a couple of points adrift in the championship. How very dare you, sir? The problems at Red Bull are vast. Don't pretend like because Max has been papering over the cracks, because of his genius behind the wheel, particularly at Suzuka in qualifying and during the race. Just because of that, don't make out like Red Bull haven't got problems. As a F1 team and a car, it's a pail of water with so many holes that it's no longer recognisable as a pail. Yes, occasionally at a couple Grand Prix, 1 or 2, Suzuka et al., they'll rock up and manage to nail it. Sometimes they'll win the lottery, but as far as design, they are a gazillion miles off. They will have to bring upgrades. At Imola, some say the first will come. Say all that to say this. the importance of George Russell and his future, where that rests, impacts directly on Maximilian Verstappen, because potentially if George signs at Mercedes, that means that there will be no room at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth's Inn for Mr. Verstappen. Here's what Martin Brundle said. He believes that George Russell's future isn't certain after Max Verstappen's exit talks. Exit talks that Max Verstappen has said, I won't be at the... He hasn't said this directly, but again, 3 things he needs: the car, the people, and a semblance of harmony. He has none of those, chat. You saw last race week, and let me explain the extent of what I'm talking about here. How is Jack Doohan in an Alpine gapping Max Verstappen and closing down onto his gearbox to where he's within DRS? Riddle me that. How is Max Verstappen, who we know that dude to be, struggling to overtake Pierre Gasly in the dying embers of a Bahrain Grand Prix Sakhir International Circuit? How? The only reasonable, rational-minded answer to that question is that RB21 at best is mercurial to set up, temperamental, difficult as far as its handling dynamic, at worst an SH1T box of a car. That's the only rational-minded solution. Okay, at Suzuka they managed to nail it. We know that the car was difficult to set up, but they nailed it then. It was balanced. It was taking some downforce out of the rear wing, but that's not going to happen each and every single Grand Prix. They can't continue to buy the winning lottery tickets as far as setup. Martin Brundle continues, I think if Max Verstappen sprung into the marketplace, I would be quite worried for King George Russell. No kidding, Sherlock. George or Max, as brilliant as George has been thus far this season, Mr. Consistency, Alan Prost settings, points accumulator extraordinaire. Do you think for a second that Toto won't drop kick that dude in the chest if it means getting a whiff of Maximilian Verstappen? You bet your bottom dollar it doesn't. What do you mean? Martin Brundle continues, I would be quite worried for George, actually, because Kimi is obviously their man for the future, so there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. Of course, Martin Brundle's talking the gospel, as he always does, shooting from the hip as we'd like them to. George, continues Martin Brundle, quote, he's doing a great job for him as team leader, but Toto missed Max once. I don't think that he'll miss Max a second time should he get the opportunity. Turtle, Joss ain't going to like this at all. I mean, it's moving, isn't it? None of this is fixed, and this is all F1 conjecture, barbershop talk and speculation. But as far as silly season is concerned and the driver market, it's kicked off already. Why? Because the RB21 and the Red Bull circumstance is so chaotic as of the 17th of the 4th, 2025. Formula George Gas has been more consistent, 100% compared to Piastri, but that made Chet is a good shout. It is a good shout. They will keep Kimi 100%. I don't think they can get rid of Kimi, Max. He's too young, and currently his potential ceiling far too high. I think they will keep him. Yuki will prove through. Oh, mate, we'll talk about Yuki. We'll talk about Yuki later on today where we go along. Winning Formula, Yuki gets dealt a hand. He has now to play with. Oh, go on then. In closing, this is important. Where's Max Verstappen going to end up? If I'm making a prediction, I would argue not at Red Bull. There are too many problems now of consequence. The extent, length and breadth of them, the frequency at which they're occurring is too much. Max Verstappen is currently 7 or 8 points adrift of Lando. I can't remember which. But again, he's performed magic. Australia was anomalous. Suzuka was anomalous. I would argue that there's only a couple men in history that could do what Max Verstappen did in that RB21, in qualifying, carrying that pace through Degner 1, braking 25 metres later than Lando Norris, just as he did at Monaco a couple of years ago. Fernando El Plan Alonso, 0.3 of a second, sector 3, 22nd sector. It's techie, that, and it's unreasonable of Red Bull, Christian Horner, Helmut Marko to expect Max Verstappen to do that, to create magic and do impossible things each and every single Grand Prix. Summer break, therefore, will be key. Helmut Marko's told us that this circumstance is now DEFCON 1. The urgency is more urgent now than ever. Why? Well, because summer break is coming, and the points gap between Max Verstappen and the top tier driver, or the market lead even, in Lando and Oscar, as it will be more than likely at the summer break, cannot be meaningful. It cannot be significant. If Max Verstappen, as at the time of the summer break, is lower than third in the drivers' standing even, as far as Red Bull are concerned, Horner, Marco, Red Bull chief execs, C-suite level execs, as far as Red Bull are concerned, Houston, we have ourselves a problem. But I digress.